The skies above New Haven burned with the orange glow of dying orbital platforms. "Commander," Yu pressed his face against the command center's reinforced window, watching another defense station explode in a brilliant flash of white light. The Korthok warships moved like metal sharks through the debris field, their dark holes bristling with weapon arrays that had already claimed 3/4 of his fleet. His hand shook as he activated the emergency BROADCAST system. Static filled the communication channel, interference from the enemy's jamming arrays, making every word a struggle. "Any vessel receiving this transmission," Yu spoke into the microphone, his voice breaking despite his efforts to remain calm. "This is Commander Yu of the Zephyrian Defense Force. New Haven Colony requests immediate assistance. The Korthak Empire has begun full planetary assault on our agricultural world." Below them, the first wave of troop transports was already entering the atmosphere. You could see the landing craft descending like dark rain toward the farming settlements, where millions of civilians had nowhere to run. "We estimate 2 rotations before complete subjugation of all population centers. Our defense fleet is nearly destroyed. Any assistance would be—" An explosion rocked the command center, sending Yu stumbling against his console. "Would be greatly appreciated." The message shot out through the galaxy's communication network, bouncing from relay station to relay station across civilized space. On a dozen different worlds, military commanders received the distress call. Most deleted it immediately. Everyone knew about the Korthok Empire and their reputation for turning entire species into slave labor. Their military was too strong, their reach too wide. Getting involved meant inviting their attention to your own world. The Altarian Council debated for 6 hours before deciding they couldn't risk it. The Centauri Federation marked it as under review and filed it away. The Vegan Trade Alliance calculated the economic impact of intervention and quietly archived the transmission. But at the very edge of known space, in a system marked with warnings that screamed Deathworld approached forbidden, the message reached different ears. Admiral Jin stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Determination, studying star charts with his senior staff. Earth had only discovered faster than light, traveled 3 years ago, by studying the wreckage of an alien scout ship. Most galactic species still considered humans primitive savages from a nightmarish world of extreme gravity, violent weather, and predators that would give seasoned warriors nightmares. Jin listened to the transmission twice, his jaw tightening with each word. His bridge crew watched him carefully. They all knew that look. "Navigation," Jin said quietly. "Set course for New Haven. Maximum speed." "Sir," his communications officer asked, "shouldn't we contact Earth Command first?" Jin's eyes never left the star map showing New Haven's position. "There are people dying right now, while bureaucrats debate. We go now." Communications Officer Ra stared at her console in complete bewilderment, running the transmission analysis 3 times to make sure she wasn't seeing things. The response signal showed impossible readings, clean, strong, and originating from coordinates that made her stomach drop. "Sir, we're receiving a response transmission," she called out, her voice cracking with confusion. "But the origin point is listed as ... Earth." Commander Yu looked up from the tactical display where red warning symbols showed Korthok forces advancing toward the planet's surface. His tired eyes narrowed as he processed what she'd said. "Earth, that's impossible. Run it again." "I've checked it 4 times, Commander. The signal is definitely coming from the restricted Deathworld sector." Yu felt a chill run down his spine. Every spacefaring species knew about that region. It was marked with warnings in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing: stay away. The planets there were so hostile that even terraforming was considered impossible. "Run a full database search on this Earth," he ordered, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. Another explosion outside the command center reminded him. They had maybe hours left before the Korthok ground forces completed their landing operations. The search results appeared on the main screen, and what you saw made him question everything. He thought he knew about galactic civilization. The entry was barely a paragraph long. Recently contacted primitive species. Technological development approximately 200 years behind galactic standard, barely capable of faster than light. Travel, originating from Class 12 Deathworld, with gravity index 1.8. Atmospheric composition toxic to most known species. Surface temperature variations that would kill most life forms. But then the transmission came through clearly, cutting through the static that had been plaguing their communications all day. Cepharian vessel, this is Admiral Jin of Earth Forces. We have received your distress call, and are currently en route to provide assistance. Our estimated arrival time is 6 standard hours. Maintain your positions, and prepare for coordinated defense operations. RA nearly dropped her headset. Commander, they're speaking perfect galactic standard. But according to our records, there's never been any linguistic contact protocols established with this species. How do they even know our language? You watched another Korthok heavy cruiser begin its bombing approach toward the agricultural settlements on the eastern continent. Massive explosions bloomed across the farmlands where millions of families had built their lives. Time was running out fast. Maybe they learned it by listening to our broadcasts, you said, grasping for any logical explanation. Or maybe they captured one of our ships. Sir, with respect, that doesn't explain how they developed military terminology. This sounds like they've been studying galactic military protocols for years. Outside their window, another orbital platform exploded in brilliant flames. You made his decision. I don't care if they're silicon-based rock creatures with tentacles for arms, he muttered, keying the response channel. If they're willing to help us fight the Korthok, we'll take any assistance we can get. Captain Wu stood in the war room, surrounded by floating holographic displays that showed every detail of Korthok military formations. The blue light cast shadows across his face as he studied enemy ship configurations with the intensity of a predator examining its prey. Around him, strike group commanders leaned forward, absorbing every word of his analysis. The Korthok Empire has been successful for one simple reason, Wu began, manipulating the hologram to show a typical Korthok battle formation. They rely on overwhelming firepower and psychological intimidation to break enemy resistance before real fighting begins. The display shifted to show recorded battle footage from previous Korthok conquests. Alien fleets scattered after the first few devastating volleys, their commanders surrendering rather than face total annihilation. Their standard doctrine assumes enemy morale will collapse within the first 30 minutes of engagement. Wu continued. Intelligence reports suggest they've never encountered sustained resistance from any species. Once their enemies start running, they consider the battle won. Colonel Bo, leader of the Marine boarding teams, stepped closer to examine the Korthok ship schematics rotating in the air. His weathered hands traced the vessel outlines as he identified weak points and entry vectors. Look at these ship designs, Bo said, highlighting structural details. Everything is built around cramming as many weapons as possible into their hulls. They've sacrificed defensive compartmentalization for firepower. Once we breach their outer armor, they'll have serious problems containing boarding parties. The other Marine commanders nodded grimly. They'd spent decades perfecting ship-to-ship combat techniques that would terrify most civilized species. While other galactic militaries focused on long-range engagements, humans had mastered the brutal art of close-quarters, space warfare. Admiral Jin watched his officers work with quiet satisfaction. There were no lengthy debates about rules of engagement, no committees formed to discuss diplomatic alternatives. While other species would spend weeks arguing about proper protocols, Earth's military machine was already in motion. Time to target, Jin asked his navigation officer. 4 hours, 30 minutes at current speed. Admiral, fleet status report. All 200 vessels report combat ready. Ammunition stores at 100%. All weapon systems green across the board. Jin nodded slowly. The fleet had been assembled in record time. Destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels pulled from patrol duties across human space. What impressed him most wasn't the speed of assembly, but the fact that every ship's crew had volunteered for the mission without hesitation. The Korthok had made a fatal mistake. They'd threatened innocent people within range of a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Now they were about to learn why humans didn't negotiate with slavers. All ships, Jin announced over the fleet communication channel. Final weapons check in 1 hour. Remember, no quarter for those who prey on the innocent. General Vec stood on the command bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor readings with growing irritation. 200 unknown vessels had just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's outer edge, their formation tight and disciplined. His tactical officer was running identification scans, but the computer kept returning error messages. Sir, these ship designs don't match any known galactic military patterns, his aide reported nervously. The energy signatures are unusual. Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the approaching fleet. They moved with precision, maintaining perfect spacing despite their obvious haste to reach the inner system. Most species would have sent scouts first or attempted diplomatic contact. These newcomers were heading straight for the battle zone. Open a channel, he ordered, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. This would be entertaining. Unknown vessels, you have entered Korthok territorial waters, Vextar announced, his voice carrying the authority of an empire that had conquered 17 star systems. Surrender immediately and prepare for processing, or face immediate destruction. You have 60 seconds to comply. The response came back almost instantly, delivered in a calm, steady tone that surprised him. Negative, Korthok vessel. You will cease hostile operations and withdraw from this system immediately. This is your only warning. Vextar's mandibles clicked in genuine amusement. In 3 decades of conquest, no species had ever spoken to him with such directness. Most begged, pleaded, or tried to negotiate. These creatures sounded almost bored. General, his weapons officer called out, they're not slowing down. The lead vessels are moving into attack formation. Through the viewports, Vextar could see the human fleet spreading out into combat positions. Their movements were fluid, practiced, like they'd done this countless times before. But that was impossible. His intelligence network had never encountered this species in battle. Attack formation, he ordered his fleet, settling back into his command chair. Let's show these Deathworlders why the galaxy fears the Korthok Empire. Aboard the human destroyer, Swift Justice, Captain Tay watched the enemy formation approach on his tactical display. Unlike the Korthok commander, he felt no amusement, only cold determination. His crew moved with quiet efficiency, final weapons checks completing across all stations. All vessels, weapons free, Tay announced over the fleet channel. Remember, no quarter for slavers. Make every shot count. The first exchange of fire lit up the void between worlds like a miniature sun. Plasma bolts and energy beams crossed the darkness, and within seconds, General Vextar realized he had made a terrible, potentially fatal mistake. These weren't just any Deathworlders. These were something far more dangerous. The asteroid field became a death trap as human. Vessels weaved between massive space rocks with movements that defied everything the Korthak knew about space combat. Captain Ho gripped his command chair as his cruiser Relentless rolled through a gap barely wider than his ship's hull. The asteroid surfaces scraping against their shields in showers of sparks. Incoming plasma torpedo, starboard side, his weapons officer called out. The Korthok heavy cannon fired a blast that could melt through 3 meters of standard galactic armor. Ho watched the energy bolt streak toward his ship, knowing there was no time to dodge. The plasma torpedo struck the Relentless dead center, enveloping the entire vessel in a ball of superheated gas. General Vextar smiled grimly from his flagship bridge. No ship could survive that kind of direct hit. But his smile vanished as the plasma cloud cleared, revealing the human cruiser not only intact, but completely undamaged. Impossible, Vexstar hissed, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. What kind of armor technology do they possess? Captain Ho's response came in the form of return fire. Twin energy beams lanced out from the Relentless, striking the Korthok vessel's shields. But instead of being deflected, like normal weapons, the human beams tore through the defensive barriers like they were made of paper, punching massive holes in the enemy ship's hull. Down on New Haven's surface, Commander Yu stood on the command center's observation deck, watching the battle unfold through powerful telescopes. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks with terrifying precision. Where other galactic species fought with honor and gave enemies chances to retreat, these humans pressed every advantage with relentless efficiency. Their coordination is incredible, Yu muttered to his tactical officer. Look how they support each other. A Korthok battlecruiser, its armor smoking from multiple hits, tried to break away from the fighting and escape toward the system's edge. But 3 human destroyers had anticipated the move, positioning themselves perfectly to cut off the retreat. The enemy ship found itself trapped in a triangle of human firepower. Within minutes, the massive battlecruiser was nothing but floating debris. Admiral Jin's voice cut through the chaos of battle, broadcast on all frequencies. All Korthok vessels, this is your final warning. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions, or continue fighting and be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to decide. The Korthok response was more weapons fire. General Vexstar watched helplessly as his fleet crumbled around him. Within 2 hours, the mighty Third Fleet of the Korthok Empire had been completely annihilated. These humans didn't just win battles, they ended them. Navigation officer. Bin's fingers flew across his console as he tracked the retreating Korthok vessels on the long-range sensors. What remained of General Vexstar, S1's mighty fleet was scattering in all directions, desperately trying to reach the minimum safe distance for hyperspace jumps. Sir, the surviving Korthok vessels are attempting to flee to hyperspace, Ben reported, his voice tight with concentration. 15 ships total, spread across 4 different vectors. Admiral Jin studied the tactical display with cold, calculating eyes. The fleeing enemy vessels were damaged but still operational, limping toward escape routes that would take them back to Korthok space. Most galactic commanders would consider the battle won and let them go. Pursuit course. Full fleet. Jin ordered without hesitation. Captain Mi, commanding the heavy cruiser Thunder, felt compelled to speak up over the fleet communication channel. Admiral, they're retreating. Standard galactic protocols suggest we should accept their withdrawal, and standard protocols don't apply to slavers. Jin cut her off, his voice carrying the hard edge of absolute conviction. Every ship that escapes today becomes a threat to innocent lives tomorrow. We end this here, completely. The human fleet split into hunting groups, each pursuing different clusters of fleeing Korthok vessels. What followed was 3 days of relentless pursuit through 3 different star systems. Unlike other galactic species who accepted negotiated retreats and honored traditional rules of war, humans pursued total victory with methodical precision. Back on New Haven, Commander Yu monitored the long-range communications with growing unease. The human fleet was tracking down every single escaping vessel, showing no mercy and accepting no surrenders. This level of sustained aggression was completely unprecedented in modern galactic warfare. They're not just defeating the Korthak, Yu whispered to his aide, they're eliminating them entirely. Near the gas giant Kepler-7, Captain DA's strike group finally cornered the last remaining Korthak squadron. 3 enemy vessels, their hulls, scorched and weapons systems failing, found themselves trapped between DA's destroyers and the planet's crushing gravity well. Korthok vessels, this is Captain DA of Earth Forces, she transmitted over open channels. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions. This is your final opportunity. The response came in the form of desperate weapons fire from the trapped ships. Captain Daw shook her head sadly. All vessels, weapons free. End it. 15 minutes later, the space around the gas giant was filled with cooling debris and emergency beacons that would never be answered. The Korthok Third Fleet had been completely erased from existence. The news of the Third Fleet's complete annihilation hit the Korthok homeworld like a thunderbolt. Emperor Zexka stood in his war room, staring at the empty tactical display where General Vextar's fleet markers had once shown 200 proud warships. Now there was nothing but silence from the New Haven system. Impossible, he hissed, through clenched mandibles. An entire fleet doesn't just vanish. His intelligence officers shuffled nervously, afraid to deliver the full report. But the facts were undeniable. Every single ship of the Third Fleet had been destroyed, with no survivors and no prisoners taken. The enemy had hunted down even the fleeing vessels with ruthless efficiency. These Deathworlders think they understand war, Zexka snarled, his 4 eyes burning with rage. They dare challenge the might of our empire. Mobilize the Grand Fleet immediately. All 2,000 vessels. Show them the true meaning of overwhelming force. The mobilization took 12 days. Warships from across the Korthok Empire converged. On the staging area, massive dreadnoughts, heavy battlecruisers, and entire squadrons of destroyers. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, representing the total military might of an empire that had conquered 17 star systems. Grand Admiral Korthaz commanded the fleet from the bridge of the flagship Dominator, confident that no force in the galaxy could stand against such overwhelming numbers. But when they dropped out of hyperspace at New Haven, his confidence evaporated instantly. Waiting for them were over 600 human vessels arranged in perfect battle formation. The human fleet had somehow tripled in size during the 2 weeks since the Third Fleet's destruction. How is this possible? Korthaz demanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. No single world can produce this many ships in such a short time. Captain Jun stood on the bridge of the destroyer Hammer, watching the massive Korthok fleet through the viewports. His ship had rolled off Earth's production lines just 3 days ago, its hull still gleaming with fresh armor plating. Around him, hundreds of similar vessels formed up in attack formations. Earth's entire industrial complex had shifted into total war production, with a speed that amazed even human economists. Factories that once built civilian transports now churned out warships. Orbital shipyards worked around the clock, completing vessels in days instead of months. Admiral Jin's voice cut across all communication frequencies, calm and deadly. You have made the fatal mistake of threatening innocent people within human space. Today you learn why Deathworlders don't negotiate with slavers. The largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin. The battle for New Haven turned into a massacre within the first hour. Human ships moved through the Korthok Grand Fleet like wolves tearing through a flock of sheep. Their crews operating under gravitational forces that would turn most alien species into liquid paste, while Korthak vessels struggled to maneuver under the stress of combat acceleration. Human ships danced between enemy formations with impossible agility. Marine Captain Key watched the tactical display from the assault transport, Fury, as his boarding. Teams prepared for close-quarters combat. Unlike other galactic species, who preferred long-range engagements, humans had perfected the brutal art of ship-to-ship boarding actions. Target that dreadnought, Key ordered, pointing to a massive Korthok vessel whose shields were failing under concentrated fire. Breach their hull at sections 7 and 12, standard shock assault formation. His Marines moved with practiced efficiency, their armor designed to withstand the decompression and radiation of space combat. Within minutes, they had punched through the enemy hull and were fighting their way through corridors filled with panicking Korthok crew members. Meanwhile, Cyber Warfare Specialist A sat hunched over her console aboard Admiral Jin's flagship, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces as she penetrated Korthok computer networks. "Their data security is pathetic," she reported, with grim satisfaction. "I'm uploading viral packages that will spread through their entire fleet coordination system. In 10 minutes, they'll be flying blind." The virus worked exactly as designed. Korthok ships found themselves unable to communicate with each other, their targeting systems failing, their navigation computers giving false readings. What had been a coordinated fleet became a scattered collection of isolated vessels, easy prey for human hunting packs. But the humans didn't stop with the Grand Fleet. Over the following weeks, they systematically hunted down every Korthok military installation across a dozen star systems. Orbital platforms, supply depots, shipyards, and command centers were all reduced to drifting wreckage. Emperor Zexka's final transmission came from his palace as human ships entered orbit around the Korthak homeworld. His voice shook with terror and desperation. "We surrender. We acknowledge human superiority. Please, I beg you, cease this destruction. We will disband our military, free all slaves, pay any reparations you demand." Admiral Jin's response came back, cold as the vacuum of space. "Empires that prey on the innocent don't deserve to exist." By the battle's end, the Korthok Empire had been completely dismantled. The species that had terrorized innocent worlds for 3 centuries was broken in a matter of weeks. Their military might scattered like dust in the solar wind. The silence that followed the destruction of the Korthok Empire echoed across the galaxy like a shockwave. In council chambers and military headquarters on dozens of worlds, alien leaders stared at intelligence reports that seemed impossible to believe. An entire galactic empire, one that had terrorized civilized space for 3 centuries, had been erased in mere weeks by a species most had never heard of. Commander Yu stood beside Admiral Jin on New Haven's reconstructed observation deck, watching human engineering teams work with the same terrifying efficiency they'd shown in battle, where Korthak bombardment had left smoking craters. Human construction crews had already begun rebuilding entire city districts. The speed was unsettling. "Your people, they're not like other species," Yu observed quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of gratitude and unease. "The way you fight, the way you build, even the way you think about problems, it's all so different." Jin nodded, his eyes following a transport ship carrying relief supplies to the outer settlements. "We come from a world where survival was never guaranteed, where mercy is a choice rather than a weakness. But we don't extend that choice to those who prey on innocent people." The aftermath of the Korthok War sent ripples through galactic civilization. Species that had maintained neutral positions for centuries suddenly found themselves scrambling to establish diplomatic contact with Earth. The quarantine warnings around human space were quietly removed from navigation databases, replaced with embassy request forms on the Altarian homeworld. Military commanders who had dismissed a New Haven distress call now studied recordings of human battle tactics with growing alarm. The Centauri Federation, which had filed the emergency transmission under pending review, hastily approved a massive defense spending increase. Every major power in the galaxy began reconsidering their military doctrines. Admiral Jin's final message to the galactic community was broadcast simultaneously from every human vessel, ensuring no world could claim they hadn't received it. "Humanity has heard your distress calls before. We've watched species debate while innocents suffered, seen committees form while people died. That ends now. Humanity will answer any call for help against oppression, regardless of politics or distance. But understand this clearly. Those who choose to enslave others, who prey on the defenseless, now have a new predator to fear. We suggest you choose your actions very carefully." The age of human intervention had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. From that day forward, every would-be conqueror had to ask themselves one terrifying question: were the humans listening?